Chapter 1. My Story. My family has always been a little technologically challenged. We just never really had any interest in technology. I grew up in Idaho, and I was perfectly happy to hang out with my potato garden. I didn't need the internet to keep me entertained. In fact, our family didn't even get the internet until November of 2010. I'm writing this sentence in October of 2017. Which means that I've only had access to the internet for 7 of my 18 years on this earth. And I didn't even use it at all until 2013. But we'll get to that in just a moment. As a kid, whenever I wasn't in my potato garden, I was always reading. I was a huge nerd. I started reading Harry Potter books in 2nd grade, which I was always really proud of, except now I'm dating a girl who started reading Harry Potter books way before me. So I can't really brag about that anymore, which sucks because I'm super vain and love bragging. But anyways, the point is that I loved books, but my love for them started and ended with reading. I had no desire to write. I had terrible handwriting, and I'd never turned on a computer in my life. So unless someone dug up a typewriter, I was pretty much screwed. Until I was 10 years old. When I was 10, my parents decided to homeschool me. I'd been going to public school for a couple of years, but hadn't always had the best experiences. There was this one teacher that would cuss at her students and occasionally throw desks. In 2nd grade. Yeah, welcome to Idaho. So I started homeschool, but I quickly became super bored. I was a pretty efficient little student, and I always finished my schoolwork for the day before 11 a.m. And one afternoon, after harvesting all the potatoes for the day, I was lying on my bed and randomly decided to try writing a book. It was just a spontaneous thought that jumped into my head, but I decided to follow it and see where it took me. I went down to our basement and pulled our only computer, a 4 to 5 inch thick laptop that was manufactured in 1999, the same year I was born, out of storage. It took about 10 to 15 minutes to boot up, which almost makes me shiver. If anything took that long nowadays, there'd be a mayhem in the streets. Now, here's the thing. I knew what Microsoft Word was, but I didn't really know how to use it. I was so technologically naive, I didn't even know that you could have more than one Microsoft Word document at a time. It just never occurred to me that you could have more than one. Sitting on the desktop was a single Word document that contained over 80 pages of notes that my grandma had taken while reading various books. Oh yeah, my grandma had given us this computer. We were so technologically challenged that our grandma was giving us technology. How terrible is that? I scrolled down to the end of the 80 pages, made the decision that my grandma probably didn't need her notes anymore, and then held the backspace button down for 5 hours. I didn't know how to select text or anything like that. I thought the only way to get rid of it was to delete it one word at a time, and if I wanted to write a book, then I had to delete this enormous 80-page document. So that was my first day as an author, a scrawny 10-year-old homeschooler that reeked of potatoes, holding down the backspace key for hours on end. The whole reason I'm telling you this is to illustrate the fact that if I was able to figure out how to publish my books and sell tens of thousands of copies and make a full-time living, all before the age of 16, then you definitely can. I don't care what excuses you have. You can figure it out, especially since you probably actually know how Microsoft Word works. After I finished deleting all 80 pages of my grandma's notes, which she luckily never asked about, I started writing a book. I don't really remember much about it, other than it was a cheesy fantasy book with dragons and a trash can that led from the fantasy world to our world. And it was about a boy and a girl, respectively named Jason and Beth. I think I got about 50 or 60 pages into it before I had another idea for a book and decided to follow that one instead. This was a cycle that repeated itself probably 20 times. I wrote hundreds of pages over the next couple of months, but I never got further than 50 pages into a single book before moving on to a different idea. I saved all these stories on a floppy disk. Yeah, that's how old this computer was. But somehow I managed to lock myself out of it and have never been able to get back in, which really sucks. I still have the floppy disk. It's framed and hung up on the wall. but I don't think I'll ever be able to access its contents. But oh well. For my 11th birthday, my parents bought me a desktop computer, and I became even more serious about my writing. I had fallen in love, and rarely did a day go by where I didn't write for 3 to 4 hours. Sometimes I would write for 8 hours a day. I absolutely loved the process of creating something that wasn't there before. There's something inherently satisfying about creating art, and I was an addict. As an 11-year-old, I finally finished a book, actually 2, and did some research about publishing, but decided that I should practice my craft a little bit more first. I kept writing in all sorts of genres and became better and better as a writer. Nowadays, I consider it all crap, and I'm sure that one day I'll consider this book crap. But at the time, I was super pleased with it, and to be fair, it was pretty good for my age. When I was 13, I was browsing Kindle books on Amazon when I saw a little ad telling me that Amazon now allowed authors to self-publish directly to the Kindle store. I dropped everything and immediately published a short story that I'd written several months prior, and it worked. The next day I woke up and my book was available for anybody in the world to instantly purchase. I was blown away. I was convinced that this was my big break. By the end of the week, I'd finally be the big-shot author I'd always dreamed of, raking in millions and going to book signings around the world. Reality was, well, slightly more realistic. Over the next several months, I sold 6 copies, total. 5 of them were to people that I had to personally beg to buy it, and I'm pretty sure the 6th was just the universe feeling sorry for me. I was making 35 cents per sale, which means in my first couple of months as an author, I made a whopping $2.10. Oh yeah, I was definitely living the high life. However, I didn't let this discourage me. I decided that even though things hadn't panned out the way I'd hoped, this was still an amazing opportunity, and only a sucker doesn't take advantage of amazing opportunities like this. Now, if you take only one thing away from this entire book, it should be that Mark Messick is nobody's sucker. That's the key to all of my success. Things didn't work out at first, but I decided to keep trying. I quickly published another book, and another, and another. I was publishing at least 1 new book every month, sometimes 2, and when I wasn't writing, I was reading every book I could find about marketing and sales psychology and crap like that. I'm not exaggerating when I say that I read hundreds of marketing books over the next couple of months. I saw a couple small spikes in sales, but I still never made more than $20 a month during my entire first year as a self-published author. During my second year, I never made more than $50 a month. And then, all of a sudden, my sales spiked. I published a new book and made $1,600 that week. Then sales dropped off, but a month later I published a new book, and this one made over $2,000. And so I kept doing what I was doing until I was making a pretty steady average of $4,000 a month. $48,000 a year as a 15-year-old ain't too shabby. Sure, it might not be enough to support a family in today's economy, but for a teenager who was still living at home with his parents, it was amazing. Since the age of 15, I've published loads more books, started a couple of little businesses, and have had a rollicking good time. I just barely turned 18 years old, and I honestly can't complain. I've been very blessed up to this point in my life. So there you go. That's my story. I started out as a technologically incompetent potato boy, and now I'm here. I'm not the brightest light bulb in the toolbox. I'm not even a particularly good writer. I doubt my writing would win any awards or anything, and yet I've been successful beyond my wildest dreams. I attribute all my success to a single key factor. I'm stubborn as all get out. If I wasn't stubborn, I would have quit after the first couple of books that all bombed horrible. But I didn't. I stuck with it for 2 frickin' years. I pulled all-nighters. I sacrificed my social life. I would oftentimes skip food so that I could keep writing. I'm not necessarily proud of all the sacrifices I've made, but they got me to where I wanted to be. However, my hope is that I'll be able to teach you what I've learned during those 2 years of trial and error, so that you won't have to go through that yourself. Success is a puzzle that needs to be solved, but not one that's impossible to crack. If you want it bad enough, I'm certain you'll figure it out.